and joining us. It's always a pleasure to speak to you here on the broadcast. We now move on, and Mexico is facing growing pressure after US President Donald Trump threatened to impose tariffs on countries, including Mexico, that send oil to Cuba. In response, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum warned that such measures could trigger a serious humanitarian crisis in Cuba, affecting hospitals, food supply and other key services. Sheinbaum emphasized that while Mexico's oil shipments represent less than 1% of the country's production, the government is looking for diplomatic solutions and alternatives to help Cuba. Mexico, a vital oil supplier to Havana, could suffer significant repercussions if it continues to send oil, as Trump's tariffs loom large over future trade relations. Let's listen into what the Mexican president had to say.
Dos, la aplicación de aranceles a países que suministran petróleo a Cuba podría desencadenar una crisis humanitaria de gran alcance, afectando directamente hospitales, alimentación y otros servicios básicos del pueblo cubano.
Professor Rohan Gunaratne joins us now. He's an international affairs expert joining us live from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. What's Donald Trump aiming to achieve here by imposing tariffs or threatening to impose tariffs on countries that send oil to Cuba, even if they are close and traditional allies like that of Mexico?
President Trump is determined to ensure that the US will dominate the Western Hemisphere. He doesn't want any country that is within reach of that hemisphere to have any alliances. So Cuba is politically not with the United States. And that is one of the principal reasons he has taken this stand. This position of Trump will continue because this is a part of his mindset, his thinking of, firstly for him, America first, and then of course the Western Hemisphere.
And Professor Gunaratne, warnings of a humanitarian crisis were expressed by Sheinbaum. Of course, Cuba, a country in extreme economic hardship, causes it suffers frequent blackouts, among other issues. How credible is that risk, and how dependent is Cuba on Mexican oil?
Cuba certainly is a country in crisis. There is a very strong humanitarian dimension that needs to be addressed. But when it comes to President Trump, human rights and the rights of minorities, it really doesn't count. So his thinking is very different from the previous US administrations that we have seen. But this is the very beginning of leaders who will first think of their interests and govern accordingly rather than looking at humanitarian issues globally.
And of course, the United States has one of the longest trade embargoes with Cuba in relation to the world. It's one of the longest trade embargoes in history. However, do you think this administration marks a more hardline US approach towards Havana compared with recent presidents?
We have seen that some American presidents have even wanted to improve their relationship with Cuba. But in the case of Trump, he always believes peace through strength. So this may be also his way of eventually bringing Cuba under his influence. He believes that he must demonstrate strength in order to get people to follow him rather than be a threat to him.
Professor Gunaratne, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. It's always great to speak to you on these issues. We now move on over to the United States.